So before we talk about cons abroad, I want to first say that for many of you who have not traveled before, or considering going abroad for a con, or even simply abroad for exploration, it really isn't that expensive, it's not that difficult, and it's not that daunting. In the 11 years that I've been traveling, I've only encountered a few problems, and most of which were actually misinterpretations in miscommunication. Poor planning on my part, and various other issues that come along the way. But let's say you want to attend Dublin, for example. That's the biggest European convention that happens in Düsseldorf every year. It lasts from Friday until Sunday afternoon. For me, you would plan the entire thing from start to finish, and it's really simple. So, you plan to fly either over on the first day of the convention, which I do if you want to save time, if you're working, whatever happens, or you might fly the day before the con. For me, I like to search it on Google Flights, search it from Dublin to Düsseldorf, and then there's a tab that opens that says Google Flights. It's the easiest way to find cheap flights. Before, Skyscanner, Kayak, and Expedia were the best way to find cheap flights, but actually nowadays they lead you to scam websites. So honestly, in my opinion, please do not use any other websites except directly from the airline itself. When it comes to accommodation, I always use booking.com. I actually select the map view, and then I determine which is the best location for the best price determination for the convention's location, because I always like to be able to walk to the con. Maybe you have a suitcase or whatever the fact is, you don't want to be taking transport. So for me, I always use map view to find the best accommodation. You don't want to be walking for ages in the con, in your cosplay. So I often ask myself, like, how much luggage should you bring? So for me, I've actually traveled with just a backpack or maybe a small suitcase. It really depends on your own cosplays. For example, a small suitcase is only €30 return on a flight and €50 return for a 20-kilogram bag, which is like the really large suitcases. So really it's not that much more. So for me, for example, when I'm traveling to European conventions, like a flight return, if you book it like 2 months in advance, it's only going to be like €100. So 150, it probably cost you that much to come here today, like no joke. So just to be honest, it's really not that expensive. For me, it usually fits 2 to 3 cosplays in a small suitcase. And sometimes, I'd actually wear one of those cosplays on the flights. And like, you might think that's a really radical idea, but for me, I often wear cosplays when I travel. I often think, like, why not? Like, so things that I try to remember to like make life easier when you're traveling. Make sure that you check that your phone network has data that works abroad. And I have a very intimate story which happened to me just on the way to Dublin Comic Con. I was at another convention during the week in England. Been using the same data for years, got over there, data did not work, couldn't find the maps, couldn't find the directions. I literally had to go up to every individual and be like, how do I get the train here? How can I get my ticket? For example, you arrive and the QR code does not scan, so you're just like, so please check with your mobile provider that the data will work in the other country that you're traveling to. So that's like number one. Another reason that you might want your data to work, not just maps and QR codes, you might want to add people on Instagram, people that you meet, people that you take photographs with, check the maps for your hotel, and obviously, check tickets if you're going to after parties or whatever like that. So, another thing to keep in mind is that cons abroad tend to not take cash, unlike maybe Dublin might take cash. So most cons in Europe, they only take cards, so remember, that's not an option. So you need to always have your card with you if you're traveling abroad. Think about traveling in the right clothes. It's not about, what you would normally wear at home. So you might thinking, like, for example, I went to the Czech Republic. It's really hot in the summer, like much more than it would be here. So you need to take the right attire. It's the same if it's raining. And believe it or not, many props, including umbrellas and things like that, can actually be brought with you on a flight for absolutely no charge. So it does not matter the size of your umbrella. This includes swords, boots, even wigs. If they are not in a bag, you can absolutely bring them on a flight for free. You can bring 2 or 3 umbrellas on a flight for free if they're not in a bag. So just keep that in mind. It's absolutely so much easier to bring those kind of props and bring umbrellas with you on a flight if you want to. It doesn't cost you anything. They only go in bags. So keep that in mind. And one thing that I like to do is, say you're going on a flight and they say that you can only bring like one duty-free bag, or you can only bring one bag. That restriction only applies to the boarding gate, right? So what I like to do is that I have like 2 or 3 little stashed small plastic bags that I bring in my pockets. And once you pass that boarding gate, whatever was in your hands, whether it's, well, I know this is absolutely terrible, but if it's your props, like you can just pop them in a bag. Once you get past that boarding gate, you're on the flight, you can pop them into several bags if you want. You can put each wig in a bag, you can put your boots in a bag, and they will not mind. Once you're on the flight, it's all good. I don't know why they have such regulations, but for me, I've traveled with twice as much as I wanted to travel with, just using this technique. So I think it's really good. And you probably all know this, like super, you know, typical stuff, but when I travel, like especially as a cosplayer, you have to know that like everything is 100 milliliters, you have to bring small, but anything that you want to bring, like small scissors and your contact lenses, everything has to go in the same bag. I've been in situations where like they're taken off you, so you have to remember that they all have to go in the same small little bag. Like if you're traveling on holidays, they all have to go with you in the same bag. So yeah, as long as you prepare in advance, like it's absolutely no problem. Some things about the language, for example, everyone will speak the same amount of, like, well, everybody will speak a different, I suppose, amount of English in every country, wherever the convention is being held. I wouldn't be worried about that, because like whether it's not you're wanting to speak to the staff, when it comes to like anime and manga and conventions, usually people are very accommodating to the English language. So like I've been to a lot of conventions in countries that English is not spoken. People will always understand you, and even if they don't, you will find individuals who you might befriend people in a queue and they will speak on your behalf. They might understand both languages and you can speak to them and talk to the staff and say, hey, can you tell them like my ticket didn't work, or maybe I want to bring these props in. So honestly, it's not as hard as you think when you go up to another country and they don't speak any of your language. You can get through that communication barrier. So honestly, it's no problem. I've had like a lot of comments when I was talking about this on Discord and Instagram, like, are, you know, European cosplayers more judgy? You know, are they, you know, more high standard than in Ireland? When it comes to like traveling, I don't think so. In fact, I think that there's a certain amount of gratitude for cosplayers from Ireland or from wherever, from abroad. When you go to another convention in Europe, they're very excited, they're very enthusiastic that you're traveling to wherever it is. If it's Germany, if it's America, they're super enthusiastic that you're traveling all the way to their country for a convention. They're not going to judge you that you don't speak their language. In fact, they're super enthusiastic about it. So I think that's another really, really good point for traveling. It looks good for your country, it looks good for you, and they really appreciate it. So there's definitely no barrier there when it comes to being, you know, judging, or in fact, I think it's a great opportunity for individuals to learn a lot about culture, a lot about cosplay, and a lot about what fandoms are out there other than what's here, because maybe something that you love is not popular in Ireland. It really might be if you say go to Austria or Germany, but you have to do your research. You know, do your research in Germany, do your research on Instagram, do your research. There's a great website. I actually can't think of the name of it, but if you actually Google and say popularity of a certain fandoms on Google, you can actually see what countries are most popular for what animes. So if you're thinking about going to a con and you really want to cosplay a character where there's going to be a huge meetup, it's actually really, really possible, and I think that's an absolutely wonderful opportunity. So for me, as a creator, as somebody who also performs, I dance, I sing, I also cosplay, but for a creator, I think that one great opportunity that you can do is to contact the conventions ahead of time and say, hey, I'm traveling from abroad, I have quite a lot of expense, and you know, what could the con offer me, or what advice can you give me? And oftentimes they'll say, oh, you know, we're willing to give you like a free ticket, we're willing to give you some advice, like this is where you should stay, or you know, you should probably arrive at this time, or this kind of weapon is allowed, maybe you can bring liquids, you can't. So I think it's really interesting when you contact a convention in advance, they will give you all the tips that you need as an international cosplayer. And I think rather than just winging it and going and not contacting them, I think that's a really good point to kind of contact them in advance and say, hey, like, you know, I'm a creator, I'm an Instagrammer, I'm a YouTuber, I'm a performer, and say to them like, where does that fit in terms of your convention? And they will 9 times out of 10 they will reply to you. You always get those You always get certain people that do not reply to you, so don't, you know, be disheartened if they don't reply to you, because 90% of the time they actually do. So yeah, don't be worried about that. And one of the reasons that I really love doing this, and I really encourage other people to do this, is I don't know if any of you have ever heard of cosplay CV. Have you heard of a cosplay CV? No? Okay, well, a cosplay CV is pretty much like your own work resume, except it's for conventions. It's if you've done panels, it's if you've had tables, it's how many characters you've cosplayed, for how long you've cosplayed. So it's just like your CV, but for cosplay. I think this is really, really awesome. I think every cosplayer should have one. But if you travel abroad to conventions, this is one thing that you can add to your CV that helps you get to more and more conventions abroad. And I think it's a really great way of kind of boosting up your cosplay CV. I would actually love to do like a reenactment of like how to make a cosplay CV, but probably not in this panel, but maybe in the summer panel. But that is something I think everybody should do, is like have a cosplay CV. So yeah, panels and shows are a great way to like to travel abroad to conventions, because when you think about it, if you go to a German con or a French con, or you know, from Finland, you will not have like panels in English. You will not have the cosplay competition in English, and so they are very enthusiastic about having an English speaking con, because a lot of those individuals would know English and they would speak English, but they do not have the option where people would feel confident enough in their country to come and do panels in that language. So you have a panel that's advertised in the English language. People are very enthusiastic about going to that. So that's another good point. You might think, oh well, you know, why would I do a panel there if they wouldn't understand me? They do, and even if they don't, if you prepare in advance, they will actually subtitle your panel for you. So I think that's all the more encouragement to do so. And a few of the, you know, similarities and differences that I really wanted to point out was, you know, first of all, the sheer size of the amount of people that would attend conventions abroad. So you're talking about 10,000 plus that would attend them. So what does that mean? It means that the convention location is better. So usually the conventions abroad are all on one level, so they're all on the ground floor, which means more accessibility. It's easier for you to pass through different areas, so you're not losing time like going through floors. And also it means that the whole place is more spacious. So often they have like outdoor areas on the ground floor, so you don't have to actually physically leave the building. So they often have amazing photography areas within that, which are outside smoking areas in the venue outside itself. And so yeah, definitely the location is one thing that really makes a con, because when you think about the conventions that you might have been to, the location was everything. The other thing is that there's a lot more opportunity for competition. And the competitions would usually be in like 7 categories. They have A and B competitions, gaming competitions, cosplay competitions, and even out of character, just even in your own clothes or your own original character dance competitions. And you might, okay, so one point that I really want to make is that everybody gets the opportunity to perform at least a 3 to 4 minute piece on stage, which is different compared to, say, Dublin Comic Con, for example. They only use those opportunities for people who are very professional, for people who have practice, for people who have a very high standard, for them to actually come on stage and perform. So you might only get 10, 12 acts. Okay, you might think that that's bad, but it isn't bad, because it gives the judges more of an opportunity to judge you on your actual practice performance. It gives you a full piece of content that you can reuse on TikTok, that you can upload on YouTube, for example. And it gives everybody the chance to get on stage on a really, really large stage and have an amazing piece of content. So if you compare it to here, they do have cosplay masquerades where you just kind of do a cosplay catwalk, a fashion show where you just strike a pose, and that's not judged at all. But what I think is really interesting is how many categories that there are abroad and how long of a performance you get to have. 3 or 4 minutes means that you can reenact a scene from an anime, you can sing an entire song, do an entire dance, you can do Vocaloid, you can do K-pop, and so you get a really long opportunity to do that, because the conventions abroad usually last from 9 or 10 a.m. in the morning until usually 10 p.m. until the after party starts, and usually till 2 a.m. or 3 a.m. after that. So they are really, really long compared to conventions here. But that's really great, because you can come in the morning, you can take your photographs, you can get set up, you can get your food going, and then you can go to the convention, have your dinner in the evening, and then attend the party later on until as late as you want. And I think that's a really great opportunity because you feel like you have a lot more time. You don't have to rush through everything. You don't have to run to the trade hall to get your merch before it's all sold out. You can take your time, take it easy. And I think that's a really great opportunity as well. So yeah, the shows, the AMVs, the location, those are some of the things that would really be quite different for me. For cosplayers then, for example, you know, if you're traveling as a cosplayer, I like to bring a small travel iron. I didn't know one until a cosplayer pointed out to me, like, I have an iron like this big, but you can get a tiny like travel iron that's like this small, and it's amazing because you can just put it in your travel luggage, like in your backpack, and it means that, you know, when you're stuffing your cosplays in your bag, they're not going to be creased, so you can go there, they're going to look fabulous. Because I promise you, in Europe, they do not have irons at hotels like they have in Ireland. You would have to order one in. I know that sounds really crazy, but they do not have irons to iron your clothes. So if you want your cosplays to look good, you gotta bring your own. Yeah, I always bring my own contact solution for my contacts for my eyes. Because the ones abroad actually have a lot of higher saline solutions. They have a lot more salt in them, in the mixture. So I always bring my own saline solution for that. I think you should keep every wig in a separate plastic bag. I know it's kind of easier and takes up less space to kind of stuff them all in the one container in the one bag, but actually the friction between them, especially when you're on a flight, means that the wigs can get really matted when you're traveling. So definitely put them all in a separate plastic bag. Another thing I like to do, which is kind of crazy, but people have done it before, and that is to travel in cosplay. So if you have something that's a little bit bulky, a wig that you don't want to destroy, and boots that you don't want to destroy, I've often worn them on the flight. And you might think that's a little bit crazy. You might think like, oh, they're gonna judge me. I'll tell you something, I have done this about 20 times, traveling in cosplay on a flight at 6 a.m. or 11 p.m. in the night. If you have a passport and a valid ticket, they do, I promise you, they do not care if you show up in a wig as a character with contact lenses or, you know, in a full outfit that looks nothing like your passport picture. They do not mind if you travel in cosplay. And that's one thing that's allowed me to bring more cosplays when I travel, and also an extra day with opportunity for taking pictures and, you know, getting into the mood of being in cosplay. So I travel in cosplay. I'm not saying everybody should do that, but it's totally easy to do so, and they will not judge you if you do. Yeah, some of the things that I like to do in preparation for the convention is to check out their website. You can easily go to any convention website, for Dokumi, for example, that I was mentioning earlier. Go to the website, translate it into English, and check out all the panels. Abroad, a lot of the halls are so big that there are about 20 panels going on every time at the same time. So you need to plan, what would you like to go to, what would you like to do. So one thing I like to do is check the websites in advance and check, you know, what would I like to go to. If there's a lot of conventions abroad that have like a not safe for work or an over 18s area, so you always need to bring your ID with you if you're going to cons abroad, because they're quite separated between over 18s and under 18 areas as well. So yeah, lots of different content, lots of different panels depending on, you know, your age range, which I think is very interesting because, you know, it kind of separates the con that way, that you can, you know, attend whatever kind of panels are to your own taste. Another thing I would like highly recommend is like making a post on the Facebook page, or the, you know, yeah, post to the Facebook page of the convention you're going to and say, hey, I'm thinking about coming over to this convention. These are the fandoms that I cosplay from. I would love to meet up with people who are cosplaying from the same fandom, and people will reply to you. You just say, hey, I'm coming over from Ireland, I cosplay from My Hero Academia or whatever. Is anybody interested in meeting up with me, and we'll do a fan meet? And people will reply to you. They're so nice, they're so understanding. Don't think that they're not, they really are. Say, wow, that's so cool. And you'd be surprised at how many great photographs you can get with whole, you know, gangs of people who are cosplaying from the same fandom as you. All you've got to do is voice it. You just got to post it and explain yourself to people, and they will be really happy about that. And yeah, you can meet the best friends. Some of the best friends that I have met, I've been through singular posts I've made on Facebook saying, hey, I love this fandom, is anybody else into that? And then you can meet them at that particular convention. And each convention will have their own Discord, Instagram, and Facebook where you can connect with people from that fandom or from that con. Yeah, other things that I like to consider, just little things that have annoyed me over the years. You have to bring a travel adapter. Irish and English plugs are only unique to Ireland and England. If you are traveling abroad, you need to bring a travel adapter. 2-prong, flat prong, you need to do that, because if not, you will not be able to charge on the go, charge at the convention. So that's a big inconvenience that I've gone through myself. Other things that I would like to do is think about pronouns. I know pronouns are like very understood in Ireland, and whether he, she, they, them. Other countries do not have the same kind of language communication. So for example, in Germany, in the German language, they do not have the word for they, them. So if somebody does greet you or does, approach you and say he or she, depending on your cosplay character, it's definitely not to be offensive. That is the language barrier there. So in terms of how you would respond to that, you have two options. You can either just accept that and just say, okay, I understand that there's a language barrier, and not be offended, because I promise you they're not trying to be offensive. Or you can just say, hey, in my country, we have another word for that. We have another pronoun for that. We say they, them. And they might say it in English, oh, they, them. And you say, yeah, that's how I would like to be addressed as. And they'll say, yeah, that's no problem. But just to be aware that if they do address you wrong, it's usually just a language barrier. It's not because they're trying to be insulting or offensive. Some other things that I would like to point out is I have very sensitive skin, and so when you're traveling, I always like to bring my own makeup products. I always like to bring my own hair products. Got to be glued, which you probably know if you've styled wigs at any point, is that obviously the best hairspray and the best glue. That is not very common in Europe, and it's very common in Ireland, England, and America and Australia. And so if you don't bring those products with you, you might end up having to use the wrong kind of hairspray on your wigs, and it just looks terrible. So if you are traveling, just get the travel size packs of Got to be glued and your own little brushes. It's very easy to do that, and you'll feel more at home. And yeah, some of those products are not available to you abroad. It's actually easier to travel everywhere now than it ever has been. I know that during COVID I did travel quite a bit, and that was obviously quite more difficult. There's not as many queues, there's not as many inconveniences as airports. You don't have to wear masks on flights and things like that anymore. And for example, every convention has a really different atmosphere, a really different aesthetic, same as airports. Every one of them feels like a different experience. Although there might be a lot of similarities and a lot of differences, each one of them for me is a different adventure, a different experience. And there's nothing like that you can find at home. Every convention you might go to, DCC, every spring and every summer, they're always going to be quite similar. But every con you go to abroad will be set up differently, with different artwork, different lighting, different music, different setup. And I think it's really interesting and really exciting to build your own knowledge and your own confidence in that experiences of the variations of cons abroad. To finalize, I just want to say that everybody should give it a shot. There's nothing that you can lose from this opportunity. There's a lot of opportunities for creators, for cosplayers. As long as you contact them, as long as you're verbal with it, the opportunity is there for you. If you don't like it, I'm a big fan of try everything once. If you don't like it, don't do it again. Totally fine. If you do, just try it once. You've got nothing to lose. And I think this, as I said, it's a great opportunity for people to meet great friends, to learn about cosplay, to learn about fandoms. And as I said, my best friends mostly are people I've met in other countries, and that's no lie. So give it a shot, see how your experience is. And as I said, if you don't like it, you don't have to do it again. But definitely try it, definitely give it one more shot. So thank you so much. I would like to take any questions you have, or any points, any opinions you have. Feel free to come up to me. I'll be here until the end of the convention. I wanted to wrap it up short because this was the last panel before the end of DCC, and I want everybody to get a chance to get the last bit of their merch and get photos before the end. So thank you very much. My name is Akadina San, and yeah, if you have any questions, feel free to ask me. Thank you so much.